I see, the last people coming in are taking pictures. And I think they're taking pictures because they're being paid to take pictures. Because I'm not that young and handsome anymore. Well, so I have a decent room. Actually, I was wondering if anyone was going to find this room back here, but it looks like you have. I have a presentation titled Why Magento is the Best Platform to Dive Into. I actually didn't name this presentation myself, but I was thankful for the opportunity to use a picture from the wonderful Adobe stock application. So we have a stock photo thing. It's really nice when you work for Adobe because you don't actually have to pay for the pictures anymore. That's really the only reason I'm still around is all the free pictures. No, I'm kidding. My name is Ben Marks. Some of you in here are faces that I have seen before, so the idea behind this track is for rookies. So whether you are new, and if you're new, absolutely welcome. A big part of my job is actually hoping that you feel welcome and helping you to feel welcome. I also would like to say to those of you who I have seen before, maybe if some of this information is, I hope it's helpful for you as you may have an opportunity to find new developers and commerce managers to work in the Magento ecosystem or in the commerce ecosystem in general. I will, let's see, that's very bright. Wow, it's a good thing I didn't go out late last night. No, I mean, don't do anything for me. So, hey, look at that. This is a full service crew here. They're pretty wonderful. They're going to take me out for steak dinner later. They don't know this, but yeah, no. So this is really a chance for me to stand up here and just talk about myself. I hope you don't mind. If you can't tell, that's me. I used to wear button-downs and jackets, but I've really just given that up. Why would you want to sit in a room and listen to me talk about things? Well, the reason is because I think my story is just as relevant an example as anyone else's story in the world, specifically of development in commerce, right? So the discipline of being a programmer, I mean, I think we can all agree there's definitely one really certain computer programmer on this screen, and that's the guy with the big beard down here. His name is Alan Storm, and if you happen to be in the Magento world, Alan Storm we call him like the grandfather of the Magento community because he was around from the very beginning. Magento was really strange when it came on the scene. And I can relate that my illustrious programming career, so I did actually stumble into open source e-commerce back in 2003 with a platform called OS Commerce. Some of you were maybe not alive when this was out. But let me come back here. It's really tough to see up close. So I have a pretty traditional path into programming. I think you'd agree. I went and got my psychology degree, right? That's always step one. Then I spent several years touring around as a drummer. Natural progression from psychology. Kind of actually really got back into psychology when I became a bartender. Then I had the luxury of joining a couple of my friends' startups, which all failed. Can't imagine what the common denominator was. But it really actually, I helped a guy swap out a transmission in a Mark II Toyota MR2, and I had to build a wiring harness for it. So based on the strength of that, he let me build the website for one of the big startups, auto racing startups in the U.S. Right? Just like everyone else's story that gets into development. And then actually after that, I started doing more and more web development. Always there was commerce. So I live in a tourist city in the U.S., and all the shops there, they almost always have some kind of commerce component. But I did get to manage a really cool component framework that had been built in an early version of Zen Framework 1. Right? This is one of the PHP frameworks. And based on the strength of that, when I finally got a chance to become employee number 1 at Blue Acorn, it's one of the big solution partners in the world for Magento, I was dead certain that I knew what I was doing. Dead certain, right? I'd been a professional programmer for a number of years, and so I looked at this Zen framework-based app and said, I'll be 2 weeks, and that website done in 2 weeks. Some of you have heard this story before. And about 2 months later, and with some of the ugliest JavaScript hacks I have ever seen, that I personally coded, we finally got that site launched. Fortunately, it was about break even. And then eventually moved on to the career that I have now, where I'm now part of an ecosystem that is billions of dollars wide, and I've flown millions of miles. So that's me with the president of Delta. Just met him in a club somewhere. That's me and Thomas Fleck. Thomas Fleck is one of the original people behind this little thing we call Meet Magento. That's me with I think, it looks like I'm working hard, writing some amazing extensions, but I was probably just checking email. And then someone put me on a sticker. Again, this ecosystem has some dubious judgment. All right, so the long preamble, why does this matter? It just goes to show you that there are no single true paths into I think a career in development. Now, if you get a traditional computer science degree, kudos. You will have learned big O notation. You will have been exposed to several languages, and you will have learned precisely nothing that you need to learn about being a web developer. I can say this because I tried to hire them when I was at Blue Acorn. I was employee number 1. When I left, we were 60. I had 19 developers under me, and most of them I had to train, from literally what is HTTP, how does this work, all the way up into becoming a developer in the commerce world. So why I bring up my story is because I would never have been able to push out that first website. I would have never been able to make progress. I would have never become a Magento U instructor, and I certainly wouldn't be standing here today were it not the help for the huge ecosystem around Magento. And from the very earliest days that the company behind Magento had announced Magento, they positioned it as open source, and they attracted open source developers, particularly from Germany and the Netherlands. And if you really want to understand open source philosophy, open source ethos, I think you can look to both of these countries as kind of stewards of that philosophy. And so what happened was I ended up on this thing called IRC. Some of you may know it. It's like old school Slack. Takes up that much RAM, not that much. And I was just asking questions because, man, I was getting stressed. My wife can tell you. And some people just started helping me. And I would ask some more and more pointed questions, and eventually they would take me into a private chat and say, okay, well, here, let's go through. This is what layout XML. This is what this principle is. And at the end of it all, I just said, well, what do I owe you? Typical capitalist American. Okay, you must, can I give you a tip? And the response was, no. Just, this is what we do. You've helped me. I've learned something in teaching you, and now you get to go out and when you learn something, go ahead and teach someone else. This is how this is a big part of how this open source thing works is giving back. So that's one of my first and maybe my most important lesson is if you want to get into this world of commerce, the world of Magento, and whatever you want to get into, find the community around that. And if they don't have if there's no community around the product, take a second to think about it, especially if you're just starting out. I think having a community to back you as you get your, really like dip your feet in, that community will supercharge everything that you do, will help you learn, will help you take your career in places that you might not realize otherwise. So just to sing some of the praises of where we are, and it's not all roses. There are some challenges. Magento today, you have greater than 100,000 stores online, greater than 100,000 ecosystem members. These are not bullshit facts. These are actual facts that I didn't make up. I'm not in sales. I don't have to sell anything. I work very closely with our community manager, Sherry Rohde, and we have a particular view on these numbers. 150 billion in global merchandise volume flows through Magento Codebase. I'll tell you why this is important in just a second. One of the things that I really find amazing is that the service economy, the business of servicing Magento clients around the world every year, is $5 billion. Actually, I'll pause right there. So those two numbers are important when you're looking at a career in commerce, and then when you're looking at a particular platform. So the story today is much different than it was several years ago. I think ecosystems, different products have learned that they have to build a community, and then you have a lot more options. There's a lot more and bigger ecosystems out there. So you do have platforms like Shopify. These are in some regards competitors of ours, and in some regards they can't possibly compete. But Shopify, BigCommerce, Shopware, you have a number here in Europe that aren't as popular in North America and other places. And you really should, if you're considering a career in commerce, you should look at each of these platforms. And you should look at the opportunities there, and you should look at the communities there, and figure out just how far you think you can go, given the resources at hand. The big story with Magento is there's a ton of money in this ecosystem. I don't really like to talk about that because then I start to feel like I'm getting into sales, but it is a relevant concern. I have gone from when I first started making sites as a contractor at Blue Acorn, because you can do that kind of stuff in the US, I was making $36,000 a year, right, as the sole developer. And back then it was full stack, but full stack today is a lot different than full stack back then. I think you have to know JavaScript now or something like that. It's stupid front end development. And today I make a good bit more than that, and I certainly travel on a pretty healthy travel budget. Just one example of all of the opportunity that exists out there, and why that's important to me, like why these numbers are important to me, is because I have even friends in this room who have long careers, people who started out as freelancers, who have built entire companies, people whose efforts today have changed. They might not write much code anymore, but the businesses that they've built, they may have 5, 10, 20 employees or more, and all of the money around this, all of the opportunity around this means that those people have careers, they have houses, they take vacations, they fund, in the US, they fund their health care and college education. But they transform, they transform the lives of others. They have had their lives transformed, right? That's the real opportunity around being a developer in the commerce world, right? And so when I do have the chance to go to, I've done some work in the past at like code camps in the city where I live, and really talk to people about what they want to do. A lot of these people are actually, maybe they're coming from a different career path. They might be completely switching what they were doing before, and they need to get Like, they need to replace the income they were making as quickly as possible. So that's why I can often recommend commerce, because I see the numbers. There are big numbers in this business, and that's just because there's a flow of money all around there. But when you look at the Magento world, I mean, we like, our actual revenues, we capture a tiny fraction, a very tiny fraction of this number. So most of the money in this ecosystem stays in the ecosystem, and it flows around the ecosystem. Now I'll move on from there and say that on the note of ecosystem, Magento wouldn't exist without it. So I guess maybe I was kind of telling a fib earlier. I am selling something. I do have to sell the ecosystem, because we have to keep this going. Like, we have to keep people interested as some people age out or decide to do something else with their lives. We need more people in our ecosystem. I mean, we have more markets to work with. We have more opportunities that we need to explore, and we can only do that by investing in the ecosystem. So as a company, we invest millions of dollars in the ecosystem through various initiatives, through various employees. So I'm just one of a small team of people at Magento who are directly responsible for engaging with our ecosystem, and we all spend a lot of time on the road. And it's not just us. I mean, Anton in the back here, his job is not necessarily to, engage with us, but pretty much every employee at Magento will tell you that ultimately our job, at some point, we touch the ecosystem. So Anton has to make sure that our architectural direction isn't, going, the wrong way. And we can only do that by engaging with our ecosystem. Now, from these engagements, we have a reality where now a majority of the new lines of code of late have been coming from the ecosystem. So it's not even just that your involvement facilitates the work of all the merchants and everything out there. Like, literally, our product is coming from you. And that's, some people these days, they say that is a corporate, sort of a corporate rating of employees' free time. But the reality is, trust me, I know from experience, you don't want people writing something as complex as an e-commerce app who aren't working in the field of e-commerce, because we can come up with really good ideas that have nothing to do with the market realities. A good example of this is the glorious area of totals calculation. So when you're in a checkout flow and you see different totals broken out, like the VAT or the shipping amount or the discount or the actual sort of grand total of the order, there's a whole architecture around how that's calculated, and it ends up becoming very complex. There's a very famous like spaghetti vomit plot of this. Related to Magento. It's on, I think, Stack. It's either Stack Overflow or the Stack Exchange site. Something like that. As a developer, as an architect, you could come up with an academic approach to that. But ultimately, what is needed in the Magento world is something that is extensible. Something that can be customized, because that's really where Magento differentiates from all the other platforms, is the degree to which we can customize and adapt to merchant requirements. I mean, it's very powerful. It's also dangerous as hell, right? But I want code around that area and around all the different areas to come from people who are actually working with the platform. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so it's a little bit of a survey of where we've been, where we are, and now let's have a way for you to get involved. We have in the Magento space a number of ways that you can get involved. This is by no means a complete list. I could not. In a 30-minute presentation, I could not give you all the resources that you could use to get started. So of course we have our forums. It was one of the first things that I broke in my new job. Literally got rid of the old forums because they were unmanageable we started a whole new form. We invest a substantial amount of money in this. In fact, we just completed. There will be native translation of content and interface coming in the next month, I hope. This has been about a 2-year project. Yay, corporate. We have Magento U. I was one of the first Magento U instructors. That program has expanded dramatically. So this is the courses that we offer online, in person. This is also the certifications that we offer. The certifications are not easy. I know. I've taken some of the certifications myself. And I almost didn't pass a certification that I helped write, if that gives you any indication. DevDocs is that's our documentation. For those of you who are new to this whole thing, it's amazing because in the early days there was no documentation. Now we have documentation. We actually work on our documentation in concert with our ecosystem. So at the top right of every docs page, you can file an issue, say like, hey, this doesn't make sense, or hey, you're missing a step, or if you want, you can actually submit that correction yourself. We have a whole team that actually helps document our system, but of course we accept your input. Now, relevant to Mr. Krill and others, github.com/Magento. This is your entry point into all sorts of ways to be involved. Of course, our Magento 2 code base is there. You can see all of the issues, all of the work. It's been a long journey to get it to the kind of appropriate use of GitHub that we have. Then if you also jump into the architecture repository, that's where you'll see Mr. Krill and other members of architecture team. They spend time discussing openly what they want to do, where they want to go. They share their proposals. And they do that so that you as an ecosystem can be involved. You can see where the product is headed, and you can be involved in the direction of it. We also have this new thing that we're working on, PWA Studio. And this is a PWA front-end authoring experience. PWA is still super young. It brings a whole bunch of different technologies together, and it is going to change, PWA is changing, like the way the web works. It's an initiative driven by Google, but it is also there is some hype around PWA these days, but there's also a lot of like relevant, real change that's already happening along these lines. These are all like official resources. You also there's also a couple of Slack organizations out there that I can get you connected with. Then you have the Magento Stack Exchange. I actually started this back when I was at the agency, and it's grown leaps and bounds over the years. I'll jump over this for a second. Magento, the Innovations Lab, is another project that I've been working on. It's a way to showcase if you're working in some area of tech and you think you have an interesting combination of that tech and Magento. We have open submission windows every couple of months. Please submit it. I'll be one of the people reviewing it. You can feel free to reach out to me directly and just say, hey, Ben, I saw your presentation. Take a look at this. There are a number of community resources out there. People who, some of them are free, some of them are not. There are books, there are magazines. I think as a developer, Magento TV, it's by my very good friend and colleague Vinay Kopp, who is here at this event. A wonderful person if you get a chance to speak with him. He does these excellent screencasts. If you're familiar with like Laravel, I'd say they're kind of on par in terms of quality and quality of information and ease of use as Laracasts. I mean, Laracasts are really top, but Magento TV is an invaluable resource for you or your team. And then to meet everyone, I thought about listing people out, but I really can't. Just follow me on Twitter and see who I am yelling at or having conversations with. There's a few Twitter personalities in this room. Let me see, there's myself, my wife, but she tends to not talk about Magento too much because she's smart. You got Marsha in the back. Andreas also. A lot of people in here, a lot of people at this event, we all have conversations on Twitter. And we have meaningful conversations. We have conversations that I wake up to texts from our VPs about, going, what the hell is going on? I'm like, well, community's gonna community. It's what they do. We talk about this stuff openly, and at the end of the day, it affects our product, it affects our direction. So I'll kind of end that with talking about the Magento Association. Again, it's brand new. I wish I had more, I wish I could say more about what we've done, but I do know what we plan to do. And whether you are just starting out or you've been around here for a while, absolutely sign up. It's totally free. And this is going to be the place where we're setting the future of Magento going forward. All right, that is everything. Okay, so yeah, that's me, in case you couldn't tell. Again, this is still another picture of me, in case I don't look like me. I still have been at Magento.com. Fingers crossed that keeps going. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Marks. I prefer that you don't call me. I probably won't answer if I don't know you, but you can WhatsApp me, send me a text message if you have any questions. It is a big part of my job. It is a big part of my job that you can get in touch with me, and I can make sure that your questions get answered.